Everyone, hello and welcome to 2025 and the first edition of the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network of the new year and the first edition of Running Tales with me, Craig Lewis. I'm really pleased to join you today, but I have to say, and this is where you have to feel really sorry for me because I've been up for about 40 hours because I had the amazing pleasure of spending New Year over in Bali, which is a wonderful country. I didn't get to do any running out there, but I'm sure there's some fantastic running out there because it's just beautiful. But I am absolutely hopeless at sleeping on planes, trains, automobiles, anywhere apart from my nice, warm, soft bed. And so I just couldn't sleep on the plane at all. So if I'm looking tired, I stumble over my words. You can blame my New Year trip to Bali, but hopefully we'll have another great chat today because we've got a really exciting guest. And I'll tell you a little bit about James McDiarmid and his story before we introduce him in a minute. But I just very quickly wanted to remind you, if you're new to the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, to what we do at Running Tales of how we work. So we are a collaboration of podcasts all under the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network banner. And what we basically do is we try to tell the extraordinary stories of everyday athletes, triathletes and runners. Obviously, with Running Tales, we do runners. In today's case, a joggler. Can you believe it? And we just try and tell their extraordinary stories. We're not really about waffling on and on about VO2 max and all that sort of stuff, which some podcasts are. Absolutely fine. That is hugely important to some people, but we're a little bit more lighthearted here in some cases, and in others we are a little bit more in depth and down and in the dirt on all kinds of subjects, all related to running, of course, but also particularly on Running Tales, we like to get into people's life stories and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's a little bit of an explanation of what we do. So I hope you like it, and I hope you're going to give us a nice review and a nice rating at the end, because that helps lots of other people come to the podcast. Anyway, enough of me waffling on. I told you I had airplane brain anyway. So today's guest is James McDiarmid, and James is somebody who, well, for most people, running a marathon is enough of a challenge, but James has decided he's going to take it one more step further and juggle all the way along. This is despite the fact that initially he wasn't a runner at all, and it was the kind of entertainment side of things that was first and foremost in everything he did. But these days, running is central to his life, and he loves it. So let's get James forward and let's find out a little bit more about his running tale and his running journey.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me.
James, thank you very much for joining us. So I don't think, if I'm correct, that the running came first. So tell us how you got into juggling and entertainment in the first place, and then perhaps we'll go on and find out how that became running down the line.
Sure. So I've been a juggler for about 10, 12 years now. I learned it back in uni. It was a project of mine just to kind of engage the brain cells, challenge myself to try something a little bit new. And I had a friend who could do it, and I figured if I'm going to learn, I may as well learn something that he does, because may as well have an expert in my corner. And I found it quite easily. It was really good fun, and from there, the juggling expanded out into a whole variety of sideshow entertainment. So I actually ended up doing magic shows, circus workshops, stilt walking, balloon modeling, and that kind of actually became my life. I ended up doing a family entertainment business.
Oh well, that sounds pretty cool and pretty different from what most people do at the end of a university life. And obviously, I'm guessing while you're doing that, you've become a full-on expert at juggling and at the entertainment business. How did that transform into doing it at full pelt while you're running around?
So I wouldn't say an expert, but there's always something new to learn. I very much enjoy what I do. My mum worked in a nursery. My dad works in a high school. So we've always been a very family-friendly, child-friendly orientated family. And that kind of helps span the whole business. So doing local birthday parties in the village. I'm initially from up in the Highlands of Scotland, a place called Drumnadrocket, right on the shores of Loch Ness. And my dad would go out running out quite often. It's something I never really thought I'd be into. I've never been very athletic. I've never been very into sports in general. But I was watching the weight fall off him. He seemed to be really having a great time, boosting his mental health. And he was just looking fitter. And I thought, genetically, if he can do that, then surely I should be able to give it a try. And I did.
Yeah.
I did the treadmill at my local gym, hated it, absolutely hated it. Could not stand being on the treadmill. I was looking at just a blank brick wall, and I finally worked up the courage to get outside and try running in the wild, as it will be. And yeah, loved it. I haven't looked back.
So your initial running was just running like most of us mere mortals do, without throwing any balls up in the air at the same time, and you found enough enjoyment in that to get into it straight away.
Yeah, very much so. So I was running for probably 4 or 5 years before I decided to do juggling. I'd been aware of it from my time juggling. I knew it was a recognized sort of sport, if you will, and something that I always thought, oh, that'd be really fun just as a novelty to try. But it was only not until last year when I finally decided to actually give it a go for myself.
What was it that kind of gave you that final push to do it? Did you just get to the stage where you're like, do you know what, I've really got to give this a go and see whether I can add these two skills together?
Honestly, it was a friend of mine. She was doing a couch to 5K, trying to get herself involved in some running, and I thought, well, I'll join in. I'm not you. I hadn't ever thought about doing sort of 5Ks. I preferred to do sort of longer distances. The 5Ks to me always seemed not really worth the washing at the end of the day. But then I thought, oh, I'll go along to a park run. So I went along to our local Edinburgh park run, and I thought I'll take the balls with me. That'll give me something just to try, a little bit of new motivation. And yeah, it was great fun. It was just so enjoyable. I dropped the balls maybe 15, 20 times, running around Holyrood Park. And yeah, it wasn't as hard as I thought. Oh, I don't know if I've frozen out there, Craig.
Seems like he may have been frozen out there. He was having problems with his laptop earlier today. So I'll pick up the
No
baton.
I bored him into a stupor there.
He did say he had airplane brain, so maybe he's still recovering in that scenario. One of the things that we had talked about in the green room was this idea of running and jogging with just balls at the time, currently. You mentioned that you have jogged with fire and knives, and I kind of want to know, how does one person go from practicing with balls and things that may not hurt you to deciding that, hey, I want to start jogging or start juggling, with fire and knives? Because I'm thinking about an endurance athlete who starts with a 5K and they're like, I can do this. And then they go to a 10K and they're like, I can do this. And they go to the next one. Like, is the progression the same for you when it comes to different items to juggle?
It's exactly the same. It's small steps, one foot in front of the other. So I started with scarves, nice light silken scarves that you can throw up. They come down nice and slow, and then moved on to balls. Moved from balls to rings to clubs or battens, and then finally, once I was competent in those, moved on to things like juggling knives and slightly more dangerous props like fire. I have a whole arsenal of varying weapons that I throw around now in my professional life. But yeah, it's exactly like when I start safe, then move into the distances that will hurt.
So when it comes to like running, there are, things that we question ourselves about, like, can I do this particular distance or maybe this particular event, like a backyard ultra? Are there items that you're thinking about juggling that you're like, I need to pause a minute and figure out if this is something I can actually do? Like, are you looking at things sort of like the holy grail of things to juggle?
Oh, I mean, the thing I get asked quite often as a juggler in general is whether or not I can do chainsaws. I feel that is the holy grail for most lay people who think, oh, you can juggle, must be able to do chainsaws. I would love to be able to do them. And you do get specially designed juggling chainsaws, which are well balanced and great for the professionals. They're just very heavy. I just don't have the upper body strength for it.
So you'll have to go to the gym and do more strength training, which will help you in your running as well.
It's a full body workout. I haven't dedicated the time to the arms yet for
it. Well, Craig is back, so I will turn the show back over to him. Craig, welcome back.
Thank you so much for filling in, Jason. I seem to have managed to have found the millennium bug 25 years late, because we've got a new year and my computer has just completely crashed. The Wi-Fi has entirely disappeared. So apologies all. I hope you can hear me okay and that the audio is all right. But I'm on the trusty mobile phone now. So yeah, we're going to swap that in, and folks will carry on with this. This chat with James, and hopefully I won't repeat all the same questions that Jason's just asked. Yeah, apologies for that, James. I think I left you as I was just asking you about how you made the switch up, I suppose, from doing a bit of running and obviously doing a lot of juggling, and then bringing the two things together. And I know you were launching into an answer about that, and probably everybody else heard it, but unfortunately I didn't. But I know that one of the big things that helped you along that route was parkrun, and that was the first place where you brought that skill into being. So hopefully you haven't already said that story, but if you could tell people that now.
So yeah, I started off by doing my local park run in Edinburgh, and it was just such a good feeling. It was really nice. It meant I wasn't focusing too much on my speed. It meant I could just take a step back and really enjoy the run, focusing on something else, but still doing something that I was comfortable with. It was taking two different aspects of my life and merging them together into something completely new. And it was great, and I really enjoyed it. I got around the park run, I ran home, and I thought there must be a community for this. And I hopped on Facebook, and sure enough, there is a juggling community. Since then, so that was just about a year and a half ago now that I first took my juggling adventure, and since then 90% I'd say of my runs have been juggling. And I found a great community. There's actually about 780 something jugglers worldwide across 32 different nationalities.
Oh wow! So there's a lot more people doing this than perhaps we're aware of. But I'm interested as to whether you, on that first part run, how you found it. It's obviously two things that you were reasonably proficient in. But what was it like when you put the two together and actually started to run around that part run and face all the normal things we do? You know, you're probably happily doing lots of tricks when you're juggling, but you might not be having to run round people and so on.
Absolutely. So one of the most important things I say for anyone who considers who can juggle or who can run and is thinking about doing this is becoming competent in something called looking through the pattern, which is being able to look through the balls. Because obviously that is absolutely key to being able to maneuver. If you're busy focusing on the juggling balls, you're just going to see juggling balls and nothing else. And that way you're going to collide with absolutely everyone and everything in your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was nervous. I really was. I didn't know how people would react. I didn't know if it's something that the parkrun would allow, just for safety's sake. I was really worried that if I stayed too far in the middle or at the back, I'd bang into people, drop the balls, and then I'd sabotage other people's times, which is something I'm always wary about in races. But yeah, everyone was so welcoming. It was really good fun. I got a chat with people at the end. It's amazing how many people come up and say they can juggle, they'll take the balls, they'll have a shot, and they realize there and then it's like, oh, this might be something I can give a go. And it's really nice to see a community starting to build from it.
Yeah, and you mentioned there that since that first part run, you've almost all your runs have been juggling. So I suppose the question is, what made it for you better than just inverted commas normal running?
Sure. In running, I felt I was getting quite competent in the world of being a runner. I was upping my distances. I was trying to improve my speed. I'd never been one of these people who looked at interval training or speed training, things like that. I was always I thought I can get better by just going out and running. I was very, very naive. But yeah, I'd go out, I'd do my runs, and I'd get better. And I kind of got to a point where I felt I don't think I can push myself any further without maybe hurting myself. So I think the juggling came in just at the right time. It gave me a different aspect to focus on, and it really made me take a wee step back and think, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I'm enjoying the running. I can feel the good mentality coming in with all the distances I'm doing, and the juggling side of things. it really does help you sort of zone out. It's quite meditative.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously you were talking about the business side of things earlier, and you were saying you found it a lot of fun. It's obviously an entertainment business. We can sometimes get a little bit too, or certain of us can get a little bit too serious about our running. And, you know, there's nothing wrong about being an elite runner or about trying to get your best time and PBs and everything every time. But I think sometimes that side of things can sort of take over. It can become quite competitive. And I'm guessing to a degree that this maybe made it more relaxing and more fun for you as well.
Very much so. It gave people a nice. I felt, especially in races, I became much more conversational with people. And it was really nice just to give them something else to focus on. And I became almost in a way an aspect of entertainment during the run for them. It was like, come on, guys, don't get overtaken by the juggler. If you think you've got hard, just look at me. You know, just joking along. And the reactions were always just so pleasant, and you'd get to meet such lovely people just chatting with them. And I felt it kind of brought up that little bit more confidence that I have when I'm normally performing that I wouldn't normally have when I'm running a race, because I'd be so focused on just getting that time.
Yeah. Because of course, one thing you did do was move on from simply doing park runs, and you started taking on longer distances and bigger joggling challenges, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so. So I moved from the park run to a 10K, which was really good fun, and then inevitably half marathon to full marathon. Since then, I've now done, so that was last year. I've now done 3 marathon distances while running and juggling, which is it's so much fun. I get it's a completely different kettle of fish. I've done quite a few marathons over my time as a runner, but doing it with the balls it's just so different. It's a completely different experience.
One thing, I mean, you're talking there about chatting to people and so on, and warning them that the joggler's coming and all that sort of thing. But you're doing some pretty good times here. I think your marathon PB with the balls, as it were, is what, 3:19, and you're even hoping to break sub 3 while joggling, which is something that many of us could only dream of without juggling along the way.
So yeah, I've been really lucky in the fact that I think because of the juggling and because I've made a bit of a spectacle of myself with it, and I found this community, it has made me think maybe I could really develop as a runner while doing this. My mum constantly says, you could be so much faster if you stop the juggling. It's like, I know, but I don't think I'd enjoy it as much. This year I would love to try and push my training. I've started training with a coach, and now I am looking at things like interval training, tapering, and I'm trying to increase my knowledge as a runner of how to maintain my body and my everyday sort of running training, which has been a really new experience for me as well.
Yeah, and I'm quite, because I know nothing about the skill of juggling. I think maybe we all had a little go at school and did it 2 times or something, and that dropped the balls every time, and that was it. But I'm guessing if you're able, when you're running a marathon or when you're running for 3 hours plus or whatever, I mean, how long can you kind of continually juggle if you're not running? Because I'm guessing that's even longer than when you're running. If that makes sense.
So I've never timed it actually. I think honestly my longest continuous juggle was probably last year's Loch Ness Marathon. That was my second attempt at Loch Ness while doing the juggling, and it was my first full marathon without any drops. So that was the 3:19. So I'd say 3:19 is my longest consecutive juggle.
Yeah, and one question that my wife Michelle actually asked me to ask you was kind of what happens if you do drop the balls. Is there a situation where you obviously don't get disqualified, but you have to go and chase them down the road.
There's a lot of people like, oh, if you drop one, do you have to go back to the start? It's like, absolutely not. If you drop one, you stop where you are, you go back to where the drop was, you pick it up, and off you go again. If you drop it, it's not the end of the world. Pick it up, and off you go.
Yeah. And what's the kind of etiquette on the course that you find as you go around? How are other runners with you? I mean, you haven't found anyone yet who's tempted to kind of catch a ball as you run past them and do anything like that.
I get a lot of jokes with people. It's absolutely lovely. You get a lot of the same sort of comments with people saying, "Oh, I couldn't even do that standing still," or "Oh, I thought I was doing really well. Then you caught me." But honestly, it's all very tongue in cheek. Quite a few people do say that, if I want a better time, all I've got to do is just knock the balls out of my hands. Which,
Yeah.
honestly, you're not wrong. I will have to stop. It was last year I was doing a half marathon and I got about 10 feet from the finish line and I dropped all 3 balls.
Oh
Absolutely.
no.
Every ball right at the finish line. So it does happen, but you just laugh it off because I think with something like this, if you are taking it very seriously, it defeats the purpose. If I was going
Yeah,
around with a serious face, driving for time and really just pushing my way up to the front runners, I don't think there'd be any purpose in it. It wouldn't really serve the point of the idea that you're taking something so silly, or you're taking something so serious as running and your own physical health, and making it a little bit silly and just not taking it that seriously.
I mean, I suppose that's an interesting thing to try and expand out, I guess, into running generally. If people want to try and learn how to juggle and then joggle and so on, then cool, and add to that community. But in general, do you think that there's an advantage to people to just make sure that they have that fun element in their running to keep them going? Really?
Absolutely. I think running is one of these things that is personal to everyone. Some people run for charity, for a cause. Some people run for their own health, be it physical or mental. And some people just run because it's something they didn't think they'd ever be able to do. Like, I never thought I'd be a runner ever. And now I'm juggling. So
Yeah.
as long as you're doing it for the reasons that seem right to you and you're enjoying it, absolutely, everyone should do what they want.
Does your training differ from other people's? Are there other elements to bring in there? And I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, obviously you're training running with the balls and so on, but are there other bits of strength training that you might need to do to make sure that you're, I don't know, having stronger arms to keep the arms in the air for that length of time or
So
so?
yeah,
I don't know.
don't do too much strength training. I'm actually, despite all the juggling, I'm actually quite lazy. But I don't do too much strength training. I do every day. I do juggling practice. I actually have weighted 800-gram juggling filled balls, which are really good just for toning and strengthening the arms and helping with the shoulders. Because you'll find, especially when you're doing longer distances, you might get the tension in the shoulders.
Yeah.
The sore wrists as well, because the balls are coming down. It's just constant impact on those hands.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know, when you're running a marathon distance and so on, that there's a point in the race where you'll suddenly realise that although your legs have gone, that your arms are starting to go as well. And I'm guessing that's just exacerbated with what you're doing.
Yeah, it does give me something to help shift the focus. If I feel I'm not quite hitting the pace I want, it's like, okay, you know what? No worries. But you know what? I've not dropped as many times as I did last time, so let's try and keep the drop rate down. It just gives you that secondary goals.
Yeah, and the park runs are still going as well. I think we had a couple of people on Facebook saying when I kind of mentioned that you were coming on the show, that said they spotted you at the local park run last weekend.
Oh, that wasn't me. So there is a few of us.
Ah.
We're up and down the country. There is a good community for it in the UK.
Yeah, actually, that's something else I wanted to ask you about, the whole joggling community, because I think you mentioned earlier that it's quite a close community, and that I don't know, do you give yourselves hints and tips and so on to help each other reach better times and so on?
So very much, there's a little bit of it's very much a very supportive community. Everyone's wanting to see the sort of sport grow. And again, I think everyone's in it for the right reasons. There's a few people who were jugglers first, like myself, who then became runners. And there's some people who were runners who then became jugglers. And it's just amazing the speed differences between everyone. The gentleman who's held the world record for a marathon distance is a man named Mikhail Kapral. And he has the marathon distance at 2 hours and 50.
Right.
who's
Yeah.
obscenely fast juggling 3 balls. But there's another gentleman who's juggled every single day for something like 3,000 days in a row. So everyone's just doing it for their absolute own reasons. It's a very bizarre and niche sport, but that doesn't make it weird. I think I'm probably not saying it right. I'm rambling a wee bit, so I do apologize.
No, I think that makes sense.
It's a very unique thing, but it is one of these things that I feel anyone can try and anyone can get involved with.
Do you feel that there's a perception sometimes that with something like juggling, it's what people might think of as, oh, they must be going for some sort of Guinness World Record or something like that, because that's not actually the case. But I wonder if that is an incorrect preconception.
You get asked it a lot when you're out doing a juggle. It's like, oh, are you going for a record? It's like, absolutely not. Not of the current record the way it is. There's no way I'm hitting that speed. I'd like to keep my legs intact. But yeah, it's one of these things that people think, oh, he's doing something very odd, so it must be for a reason. Unfortunately, not. It's just because I enjoy it.
Yeah. What I really want to see now is kind of like a juggling running club where we can get 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 of you out in one group, going for a chatty run or something around the block. I think that would be quite exciting.
The 4 of us did a half marathon just back in November. We went to a half just outside of Glasgow, and it was so much fun. There's the 4 of us all scattered along the course, and another Edinburgh juggler actually did his first 4-ball half marathon, which is crazy because it's such a different pattern to what you'd be running with juggling and with 3 balls.
So I mean, I think I knew this, but obviously we haven't told people really, unless I missed it when I popped off. But you are juggling with 3 balls, aren't you? And what's the kind of difference between 3 or 4, or do people ever do it with more than that?
They do, yeah. So there's a 5-ball record. There's a 4-ball record. 3-ball tends to be your perfect sort of number. I enjoy 3 balls a lot. In fact, I've got some here if you don't mind. So
definitely.
with 3 balls, this is called your cascade, and it's your basic juggling pattern where the balls go in a sort of figure 8 motion out the way, almost like a fountain. Each ball is going up and out and up and out. So that's your cascade, and believe it or not, that falls into your running gait really naturally.
Right.
So as long as you're not trying to show off and do anything too elaborate and tricks, it will fall really at a very even bounce, and the balls will just keep going as long as you're there to catch them.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking there, like, again, I'm talking about, when your legs are getting tired towards the end of a race, you trying to distract yourself or whatever. Well, you've got a natural distraction there already as part of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's great, especially in a race. You obviously get the crowds, the support. When you run past juggling, the love you feel is just incredible, and it does carry you through. Honestly, I would only if for some reason I couldn't juggle, I would just make sure I'm always juggling past a crowd, because they just really do pull you through it, and they really do show massive support when they see you coming up a hill or around the corner and you're juggling. It's like, look at the jugglers! Like, I'm so sorry to everyone else around me.
Yeah, they start to, or maybe they think they can.
They're running the exact same distance, guys. Show some love, please. Like,
yeah, I'm just wondering whether they could maybe jump in your slipstream and enjoy some of the louder cheers and stuff as they go by.
Yeah, it gets embarrassing, but it's very much appreciated.
And just rewinding, because I took us slightly off course, but between the difference between what you were showing there with the 3 balls and what happens when you add the extra balls into the equation.
So with the 3 balls, each ball will rotate in that pattern from left hand to right hand and right hand to left hand. With 4 balls, it's much more. I'll move back for a second. It's 2 in one hand, and that would be in each hand. So it's much more this arrhythmic pattern. So the balls aren't rotating. As you can see, the blue and the pink will stay in my right, and the pink is just going up and down in my left, obviously there'd be a second, fourth ball for that pattern. Which, if you're running, it's quite an uneven bounce. You can make it work, but I feel I've tried it myself. I have to take smaller steps. It doesn't feel natural to me. But Scott, the other Edinburgh juggler, did a fantastic half marathon with the 4 balls quite recently.
And as you said, some people even throw a fifth in there as well.
Yeah. The 5th ball is actually the exact same pattern as the 3. So all the balls are going up the way, but it has to be higher because the balls they come down much faster. So you're much more looking up, which I can't do while running because I just cannot see the other side.
Yeah, maybe that's another aim for 2025 to see if you can master that
I'll
one as well.
definitely give it a go this year. I feel probably a park run. I'll be starting way at the back.
Yeah,
that will not be a easy day.
And looking at the races you've done so far, you mentioned you've done Loch Ness twice. What's the other marathon you've done?
It was Edinburgh,
Edinburgh?
EMF.
Yeah, I've done Edinburgh, just with my feet. But,
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah. No, I think Edinburgh's a lovely marathon, particularly the start. The crowds there are
That's amazing.
fantastic. There's obviously that long bit in the middle where they're kind of out and back, which is a bit harder to get through that bit. But overall, no, lovely. I mean, it's just a lovely city anyway, isn't it, Edinburgh?
No, it's a cracking race. I've signed up again this year, so looking forward to it. In fact, last year there was three jugglers who took part in it, and it was great. We were all we sort of had 13-minute spaces between our finishing times, so it was.
Yeah.
I think that was the most. Only 3, but that was the most documented jugglers at a marathon.
Oh wow! Okay, that's quite interesting then. And do you kind of get quite competitive between yourself, like first juggler?
Personally, I do.
Yeah.
I like to have that little bit of extra drive because it's something I never thought I'd be doing, and I think having that friendly competition, just that idea that, you know what, I'm going to try and catch him, gives me that extra burst of speed, and again, something else to focus on. But it's very much lighthearted, and again, we're all completely rooting for each other and supporting each other through it.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember back now because it's a little bit of a while ago since I did it. But I think in general, the terrain on Edinburgh is pretty. The streets are pretty good. It's not too bad. I'm guessing
Quite flat, yeah.
actually, that Loch Ness is maybe a bit harder. And does the whole thing become a little bit tougher when you're having to, I guess, look where your feet are falling?
So I grew up in the Highlands, so Loch Ness is my homegrown marathon. And it was my first marathon ever without the balls. And I was actually faster on the Loch Ness course than I was in the Edinburgh course. I think I'm more used to those sort of rolling hills. As opposed to just a solidly flat course. Edinburgh's got a few hills here and there, and it is a cracking course if you want to go for a PB, but I just wasn't feeling it on the day.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is just generally whether, I don't know, imagine if you were to do a trail run or something, somewhere where you've really got to look at your feet, that must become
I think the main
exponentially
thing I have
harder.
an issue with is hills. So if it's quite, especially if it's quite a long and steep hill, I lose that drive in the arms. Whereas if you have the balls, you can just power your way up quite naturally. With the balls, I tend to do one of two techniques where I get the balls quite close down so I can kind of just shoulder my way up, or I throw them a little bit higher and just high knees my way up a bit like a gazelle.
Yeah.
So most of the time, though, it's just get up the hill as quickly as possible and then just enjoy the downhill.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think we all tend to try and do that, don't we? So tell us about the training that you're doing now to try and get to, I guess, almost that next level of what you're doing, because I think there was a conscious decision to not. I mean, it was never something which you weren't taking seriously, but I think you decided, look, I'm really going to have a crack at this and see what I can do.
Yeah, no, you're actually quite right. I absolutely was not taking it seriously. I'm still not, but I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to become
Yeah.
a bit of a well-rounded runner and understand how running makes my body work. Whereas it used to be just, oh, I'm going to go out for a 15, 20-mile run today, and then tomorrow I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
all seemed like a great idea. As long as I wasn't hurting myself, surely it was fine. So now I've got a training plan. I'm starting to get into my rhythm for the training for Edinburgh this year. So I'm doing speed intervals. I'm doing a whole load of VO2 runs and just things that I never knew existed, or knew existed but did not understand. And I'll be honest, I still don't fully understand, but my coach has been fantastic in supporting me through it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess that's why why we have coaches existing, so we don't necessarily have to understand it all, but we do it anyway.
That's it. Like, whatever she says, I'm just like, okay.
Definitely. And I'm always interested in. I think this mainly comes out of my own laziness, because I'm probably still at the stage where you were before. Of I'll just go out and I'll run whatever. I've had training plans, but a lot of it is I fancy running 10 miles today. I fancy running 15. I fancy doing 2. I'm going to do a chassis run. Maybe I'll chuck in the odd fartlet. My wife is a running coach, and so she will make us all do fartlet and hills and so on. But I'm sort of dragged there with my arm behind my back. But I'm so my personal thing is I'm always slightly worried that you add the. I know that they're good things. I've spoken to so many people that I know how they can improve you, and it's kind of obvious, But if you get into the nutrition, you get into the strength, you get into doing a training plan, then we're not trying to get to an Olympics necessarily, most of us. And I'm always a little bit worried that that the danger is that it starts to become a job and that you lose the enjoyment. I don't know how you found that
No,
balance.
no. You hit the nail on the head there, because I was always worried that if I decided to sign up with a coach or try and get a training plan, it would just suck the fun out of the running for me. Because again, I was a bit like yourself, where it's, oh, just finished work, I fancy a good run tonight, or just I fancy a wee scenic route around wherever, and
Yeah,
that's how I always ran. And then as I started doing more races and I started getting slightly better times, and it started to come a little bit easier, I'm like, I'm actually doing quite well,
yeah,
just by myself. And then I think that's the thing. We're always striving to be better, and I'm not a massively competitive guy. I'm never going to be an elite. I'm not going to break any world records, but to be able to say I'm pushing myself to get better, it makes me really happy with myself.
mm. And I guess that's then that sense of achievement and that sense that you know we work really hard at things, we can get quite good at them, and especially as you were saying, I think at the start that you weren't sporty at school. It wasn't particularly running wasn't something you ever saw yourself being able to do, and here you are putting in some pretty good times, getting better, and doing it while juggling at the same time.
Yeah, it's being able to take two things that I really enjoy and dedicate. But by deciding to go with a coach, I've said I'm going to try and really dedicate some time properly to this and see what happens. If it bears fruit, fantastic. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. I'll just go back to running. Either way, I'm still getting to do two things that I enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. So Edinburgh's coming up. You are presumably training for that at the moment. Are there any other races in the pipeline, or any training races for Edinburgh?
Yeah, I've got Inverness Half Marathon on the 9th of March. Again, homegrown marathon. I always like to go up. My dad is going to run it, so we always start together, and then we'll meet up at the end as well. So it's a family affair.
Yeah, and what does Dad think of the joggling?
Oh, he says he hates it, but he says he's also proud of me, which I'll take as a compliment.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
are you able to beat him
he won't
despite
try it,
joggling?
though. He decided not to do it. My dad's actually a very talented balloon modeler, actually. Like I
Ah,
said, when I became sort of got involved with the circus skills and things like that, it became a full sort of blown family business. So she got the family involved. My mum sort of became a very talented glitter artist. My dad picked up balloons as a hobby. And he's always joking that maybe while I'm juggling, he should go around trying making balloon models along the course, which I feel would be incredible and so much more impressive.
I think that would be absolutely brilliant. I mean, I have seen other jogglers. I don't remember ever seeing anybody do a marathon making
Don't even know what
balloons
the
and
term
things.
would be for a balloon modeling runner.
Yeah, tell him we need to make it happen, because that would be awesome.
Yeah, a full running circus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like the way forward. I think that's your way forward. If you can get the full family to go out, advertising the business as you go around, then you're going to be made for life.
Worth a try. Can you juggle yourself?
No, no. Like I said, I think I probably tried a couple of times at school, and I mean, I play a lot of ball sports, particularly cricket. So my hand-eye should, in theory, be okay, but I've never been able to do it. But I suspect I've never been taught the technique, and I'm imagining that technique is probably massively important to it.
It's much simpler than you think. A lot of people, where are the balls? They'll come up and say, "Oh, I can juggle too," and they'll do this sort of thing where they pass it across.
Yeah.
Which it's a pass, it's a shower, it's a type of juggling trick. The main thing you want to get is the correct throw, which is the ball will come up, it'll come up to about your nose level, and then it'll drop back down. So it's just up and down, up and down. If you practice that style of throw, it becomes quite natural. And YouTube is a wealth of knowledge. There's thousands and thousands of tutorials on there, and yeah, it's one of these things that if you can get your head around it, you should be able to pick it up in an afternoon, and then from there on, it's just practicing, and trying to learn to look through that pattern so you can hold a conversation or you can walk around your room without banging into everything.
Yeah. And what would you say to anybody who is listening to this, or anyone generally who was thinking that they fancied giving joggling a go, and perhaps starting with 100 meters and then going on to the 5K or whatever they can make?
Yep, absolutely. Give it a try. The worst thing that can happen is you drop the balls, and in which case you just bend down, you pick them up, and you keep going. No harm, no foul. And if you enjoy it, that's all that matters. Because at the end of the day, you can't take it too seriously.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And have you found that doing this has helped you within your everyday juggling life, as it were, with the business and with the entertainment that you do?
Probably not that much. I don't really advertise the business or anything in conjunction with the juggling. I feel it's just sort of a side effect of being able to juggle. It's like, oh, he can run and juggle now. But yeah, I feel it's, like I said, it's quite meditative. It gives you that nice focus, and it does clear the head. It just gives you that moment of clarity where it's like I'm running, it's a full body workout, and I'm out in the fresh air just enjoying what I do.
Yeah. And just thinking about running generally as a sport, I mean, you again, you started off as somebody who didn't think they'd ever be a runner, despite the fact that your dad did a bit of running and so on. Um, have you been surprised how much you've ended up enjoying running and how much it's become so important in your life?
Hugely, absolutely. Like if I could go back maybe 4 or 5 years and see myself and like I run now, they would never believe me because it's so far flung that I was just never a very athletic person. I'd walk a lot, but running was just one of these things that I was never really keen on. I was actually very nervous about people seeing me run. There was always that self-image where if I'm running, I didn't want people to see me sweating and making a bit of a spectacle of myself. And now I've kind of gone the completely other end where I've just completely embraced it. And now I'm nothing but a spectacle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always interested I speak to so many people who do this and have done some amazing things in their running, and so many of them say how it was a chore at school, or they're embarrassed to run at school, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. Running's one of the most natural things in the world for us as as mankind or whatever. I just wonder why we can't seem to persuade people to naturally to do it at school or as we're growing up, because we probably are all doing it, but formally we kind of don't fancy it, do we, until later normally.
I think it's one of these mindsets where a lot of people see running as boring because there's no real goal to it. If you're not racing, you're just running, and that seems to sort of flummox quite a few people. Because I've had a few people to tell me who I know would be fantastic runners. They do a lot of walks and things, but the idea of running X amount of miles just does not compute with them. And I think it is just that there's no purpose. But I like I said, like you know yourself, once you start, it's very addictive and it's very refreshing as well. What it's just getting those first few steps out the door.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And what would you say have been the biggest benefits for you of getting involved in the sport?
Definitely health, physical health. I'm much healthier than I have any right to be, despite because I mean, if I didn't run, I would be massive. The amount of pizzas and things I eat is quite embarrassing. But
Carbs are good. Carbs are good when it comes to running.
That's hard, right?
Yeah.
But if I didn't have running, I would be massive. I would be absolutely massive. But it makes me it's very good for the mental health, and it's helped me when I moved down to Edinburgh to explore and find new places as well. It built up that internal map that I have of the city, because I would just go out, and it was during lockdown as well, so being able to go out for those runs and just take a bit of fresh air in and I've not run right of my flat today, so I'm going to go see where that goes, and then do sort of a left-right game, just keep turning and finding out where I'm going and making a bigger map and discovering new things as well, just that sense of exploration.
Yeah, I definitely think that running is so good for that. I mean, I've done it myself, and I've spoken to other people who will use it to discover the new area that they live in, but will also more and more be running when they're on holiday, or take part in a running tour in a new town where they're in, or we do that with park runs now, don't we? With people heading off all around the country to explore a new area, and that's become, I think, a very modern part of running, because it's away from that everything being competitive and everything being about winning a race. It's just like, oh, I'm going to go here and I'm going to explore this area and find something new.
Yeah, just doing it for yourself, and I think that's the thing. You're running for you, and you're just getting out, and yeah, it's a bit of time for you to be with your own thoughts, and I think that puts a lot of people off. But if you can get your head around it, I think that's one of the major benefits of running, is being able to just be alone with your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to sometimes I will go out and get lost with my own thoughts. I do, and I guess I ought to as a podcast host. I do tend to listen to podcasts and sometimes music quite a lot while I'm out there, to use that as a chance to concentrate on all those things I don't necessarily have enough time on. Which brings me on to one question that I do like to, on occasion, ask guests, and it's mainly because we've one of the other podcasts that we've got on the network with Om Gandhi and Joe Harden is What's in Your Earbuds, where they talk about all the music that they listen to generally and that they listen to when they're running. So I don't know if you managed to add a third string to your bow and listen to anything while you're out joggling at all.
So when I started doing the juggling, I took a step back from listening to anything while running, because I wanted to be very much aware of my surroundings, especially when city running. I've got to be aware of traffic, bikes, pedestrians. So I was running without the earphones, which was a bit of a strange one for me as well, because I was so used to running with music as a runner in general. Now I've started getting back into it. I have the shocks, so it's got the bone conductor, so I can hear the world around me, which is really great. And I listen to a mix of things. Podcast wise, I've been listening to Rob Dial, the mindset mentor, which is really interesting. And music wise, I like a bit of sort of folk rock, things like that, a bit of Mumford and Sons, something of a bit of a beat, bit of country feel to it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we have so they have a what's in your earbuds playlist as well on Spotify. So
Oh yeah,
you have to check that out. But
I will.
if you've got a couple of suggestions that, for that, then I know they'll definitely add it on there as well. It's one of the most eclectic playlists I've ever heard because it's come from so many different people, and I think you've got everything on there from heavy metal and heavy rock
Oh,
to
great.
some quite soft stuff to cards. I think the DuckTales theme tune is probably the maddest tune on there, but
Brilliant.
there are
Honestly,
some other ones.
that's how I discover new music. Is I'll go out if I've got
Yeah.
headphones, just put Spotify, suggest a playlist to me, and just run because it's the best way to discover it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I like to listen to new stuff. I have to admit that I don't listen to music so much because I got into a really bad habit of listening to sort of, I suppose, more up tempo music, and then you try and run PBs every time you step outside the door, and you end up getting injured every every 2 minutes. So the podcasts combined with kind of doing a bit of trail running have managed to quite effectively slow me down, which initially had the benefit of stopping me getting injured all the time, but also then had that bizarre thing where you run longer and slower, and suddenly you come to do a race. And I don't know if you found this, but you sort of suddenly crack out a PB from nowhere, despite having been running really slowly. And it's one of the strangest things in our sport, isn't it?
It is like some days you just feel like I'm not hitting it today, and then you finally get to the finish line. It's like I was flying. I was
Yeah.
absolutely flying. I wasn't feeling it. I feel like those are the bad days because you know you could have done better.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And but I think again in races, the crowds that you mentioned earlier are such a big part of that, aren't they? And I mean, you mentioned Edinburgh. The crowds there were superb.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Absolutely amazing. Couldn't have done it without them because it's so nice to see how many people will come out and support their loved ones and just give it 110%, like the cheers, like the shouts, and just the support for people they do not know for hours on end. It's amazing. That is an endurance sport in itself. Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, I supported my wife when she did London a couple of years ago, 2023, and it's a long old day navigating the tubes and pushing your way through the crowd. So yeah, I always admire those people who are out there watching the marathon runners. And yeah, I suppose the other thing I was gonna mention to you as well was in terms of what's around the corner. Have you ever thought about going further than the marathon, taking on the ultra distance or something like that?
I would love to. I really would. I've got an ultra on my bucket list. There's a Glasgow to Edinburgh along the canal route,
Yeah.
which is 59-ish miles, I believe. So it's not huge, but it's not short either. It's just having the time to get that training in because an ultra requires a lot of training.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Especially if you know, the further you go along it, I think it takes longer as well. And I guess one of the fun things about an ultra is well, again, I suppose it depends on what time you're going to do it, but a lot of people will grab something at the aid station and munch on a bit of food as they go along. Like, if you're joggling, I suppose that's probably not going to be happening, is it?
Well, I'm sure I would allow myself a few pit stops. But yeah, it's the training. The training is currently putting me off. This year, I'm going to be trying to focus on trying to get close to 3 on a marathon, and then
Yeah.
we'll see what next year brings. And maybe I'll be ultra training by then.
Yeah, definitely. Oh well, I wish you all the very best with that and with cracking on and having a go at that sub 3 hour marathon while joggling, which I think is superb. And if you get that sub 3, you're not that far off the 250. You never know.
That's it. That's it. I've shaved a good few minutes off since my last marathon, so we'll see how it goes. It's just again being that consistent and one or two less pizzas.
Yeah. And if people are wanting to look out for you while you're doing your training runs or any other events or local park runs, where do they need to sort of, without stalking you, where do they need to sort of have a look out if they want to see the joggler in action?
Oh, well, I run around Edinburgh quite frequently. You can usually catch me going up and down the Innocent Railway or out at one of the park runs, Portobello, Cramond, or Holyrood. And like I said, I'll be up at Inverness half in March, and then I'll be in Edinburgh in July.
Fantastic. Well, James, good luck with all those events. Good luck with the joggling. I hope, and I'm sure you have inspired a few other people to give it a go as well. Because it sounds like it definitely sounds like a lot of fun. And thank you so much for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Folks, I hope you enjoyed James's story as much as I did. If you did, it's really, really important for us on Running Tales on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network that you give us a positive, a 5-star rating wherever you listen. Give us a nice review. That would be absolutely amazing because it does make a huge difference. We are Running Tales, but what you need to do is find us on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts by searching for the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. And that means that not only will you be able to listen to all the fantastic guests we have on Running Tales, but you'll also be able to check out the other podcasts on our network, which include things like What's in Your Earbuds, which I mentioned earlier, the fantastic shows that Joe Harden has, Beyond the Finish Line. That's really cool. I always love listening to the guests that Joe has. Loads and loads of other stuff as well. So yeah, check us out wherever we are. Give us a nice positive review, and that would be awesome. We'll be back on Running Tales in another couple of weeks. And again, thank you to James for joining us today. And